What's going on, everybody? Figure I'd put a face to the voice for once, every now and then, I guess. The reason I am this time is because, as I've said in my past videos, I have a boy who recently went through rehab for alcohol addiction. And I had a spouse that had done the same in the past several times to no avail. In the same way as my boy, he's doing it again to no avail. He went in there for, a month and change and came out and lasted a few days before he started drinking again. And the research on this, believe it or not, isn't very interesting, so to say. Uh, if you stay in there, the longer you stay in there, the longer you're successful. And the goal, of course, is to stay in long enough to separate yourself from your addiction long enough so that whenever you come out, you you have a base starting point to just further your journey, right? Obviously, the goal being to live a life free from your addiction. And the research suggests that if you can do that initially for the first year, that your chances of being ultimately successful for an extended period of time increases dramatically. But if you aren't willing to stay in there long enough to separate yourself from the habit, to give yourself that basal foundation, you're just not going to be successful. And they do, of course, have, they call for alcoholics, they call them sober living. I think for basically like narcotics and everything else like that, is it's even if it's not called the same per se, sober living, it's still the same, essentially the same thing. You go somewhere where you don't have to be home, where you end up changing your patterns, right? So you're not just going to work and going home. You're not going by all those stores and liquor stores or the place you get your drugs from your dealer at anymore. You are changing your habits. You're forced to. And that's the whole idea and concept behind it, is to alter your habits so that you're no longer finding yourself in the situation to fall back into previous habits. Okay, I can go get this because I'm near it. And I think it's highly overlooked and highly underrated. And something else that I think is highly overlooked and underrated is the idea of a dual diagnosis. So, addiction to a substance isn't something typically that happens just because it happens. There's an underlying cause, which is the real issue that needs to be treated. Whether it's a personality disorder or it's some kind of trauma that happened, whenever in your life, that makes you susceptible to reaching out to a substance to numb yourself or whatever you're going to do. They if they don't find out what that something is and treat it, then it's essentially just a band-aid on a problem that's going to end up continuing and getting much worse. um, I just want to point that out because I don't think it gets any attention whatsoever. Personally, in my personal experience, is it requires even rehabilitation before, in order to get that basic foundation to start from, requires a few things. So for one, as my buddy pointed out to me, it's the quality of the facility you're getting treatment at. And I can agree to that. If it's a bad situation, a bad space, and you're not really not happy because you're not there to be happy, you're there to fix yourself. But if it's something that you're not willing to commit to, then you're not going to get any help from it, right? So quality of not just the treatment, but of the people providing the treatment. And I think the bigger thing to pay attention to is the level of commitment the individual is going to put into it. So if they don't really want it, it's not going to work, And normally, all I can do is say this is my experience based off of one person, but it's not. It's my experience based off of 4 decades of watching people succeed or fail at this. And the common denominator that makes somebody successful is the longer they stay away from the substance in rehab and then in some type of community living place where it's breaking their habit, the more of a success they are. The less time they give and the less committed they are to rehab and the less they don't even bother the sober living, like my partner didn't and like my buddy didn't, not successful. I will put a couple links in the description of this that point to the statistics I'm talking about. and I'll explain a little bit about a dual diagnosis so that nobody's confused about it. But I'm beyond the time limit I wanted to spend anyways. So, as always, get the help that you need. Everybody deserves help, no matter, even if you think that you don't, you still do. God bless everyone. Enjoy your week.